Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is the Mermail Master coming at you again from the Team Time Riders YouTube channel with a very special card review. Today I'm discussing a card that I really like, but have never really gotten the chance to play, and that is Spellbook of Judgment. I've been a Spellbook player for maybe around a couple of months or so. I finally bucked and bought all of the stuff max rarity online because for a while I've always liked the deck. I've always loved the playstyle. I've thought it's different, it's refreshing. It may get repetitive after a while, but it was something that Konami tried brand new, and it was something that sort of worked during the Dragon Ruler format. Spellbook of Judgment particularly stands out to me because I've always regarded this card as not necessarily a broken card, but more so a victim of the times that it's currently been in. It's kind of an issue with how spellbooks work as well, and this card sort of stands, I guess, in opposition to that. At the time, this particular version, this is the Mega Pack version. I'm currently looking for a secret rare version of Spellbook of Judgment. Hoping to get one from Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. But at the time this Mega Pack version was printed, Spellbook of Judgment had already been banned that very next format. But this card in particular, I think, could have come back a lot earlier than it actually did. A lot of people state that the card is broken because it stands in stark contrast to a card such as Heliosphere, Spellbook Library of the Heliosphere, and Spellbook Library of the Crescent, wherein that those cards are, one requires no, Crescent requires no Spellbook cards in your graveyard in order to activate it, and then you search 3. Your opponent picks one of the 3 randomly, and then that card is added to your hand, and the rest are shuffled back into the deck. But in exchange, you can only activate Spellbook cards, Spellbook spell cards that turn. Versus Heliosphere, which is you must have 5 Spellbook cards in your graveyard, and then you activate this card and reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, and any Spellbook spell cards you find among them, you get to add to your hand, and if you don't, then they get shuffled back into the deck. So at the very least, that card right there, at the very least, like Crescent is like a +0. So it's like a +0 and not necessarily the card that you want, versus Heliosphere, which is possibly a +1, very rarely a +1, and then possibly a -1 if you don't reveal any Spellbook spell cards and add them to your deck to your hand. So it's a completely randomized factor. On the opposite side of this, Spellbook Judgment, you can activate any spell cards from your hand. And it's basically like add Spellbook spell cards from your deck to your hand equal to the number of Spellbook, equal to the number of not just Spellbook spell cards, but spell cards in general that you activated after this card's resolution, and then you can special summon from your deck one spellcaster type monster whose level is equal to the number of cards added to your hand by this effect. So instantly we see that a lot of the restrictions on those other spellbook cards, such as Crescent and Heliosphere, are not present on this. You don't need to reveal spellbooks from your hand like you do for Master and Life. It's kind of like it has a better effect than Secrets in a way, wherein that you can add Spellbook spell cards from your deck to your hand, and then all you have to do is just add 3 from your deck to your hand, and you already can get like a Jogan on the field. Or you add like 7 Spellbooks, which I'd see people do, and then special summon a High Priestess from their deck during the end phase. Excuse me. It's just a very useful card. But the reason, you may think that, wow, this is a broken card that completely breaks Spellbooks wide open, and is sort of the antithesis to their slow, methodical playstyle. But I'd be inclined to disagree with you. Before, I think around 2 or so years ago, I made the case for Spellbook of Judgment's limit instead of its ban, due to the fact that, if you just ban Spellbook of Fate, you basically take away the deck's win condition. So if you take away the deck's win condition, they basically will plus without really doing too much. However, now spellbooks are running like Demise and stuff like that, and you still have Fate available. And I think that, giving Spellbook of Judgment to them back at least 1 will give them the same amount of pluses that most decks get during this time. We're looking at like the way Cosmos plus with that, with most of their stuff being untargetable, with how Pendulum instantly able to summon their stuff back every single turn. And even with ABCs, make a whole bunch of XYZs, detach a whole bunch of stuff, and then banish all that stuff for Dragon Buster to give you a little bit of defense on your next turn. So all of these decks definitely have ways to push for that, like, damage and stuff like that. And I think Spellbook of Judgment coming back to 1 would give spellbooks enough to possibly compete at tier 2, tier 2.5, but not enough to make them like a designated threat within the metagame. The power creep has approached that point where you don't need to do anything to Fate. You just need to make it easier for them to activate Fate, and a good, like, basically would reward. It's like a deck that's like good enough to reward a dedicated player, but not good enough so that, someone who's just not thinking and going through the motions can still top like they would with like Cosmo or ABC. But I think that Spellbook of Judgment can come back to 1. I would like to see Spellbook of Judgment come back to 1, in the same vein that I would like to see, a Dark World spell card that can let them activate their secondary effects that, have been locked out of the game for a while. So, yeah, Spellbook of Judgment, I think, is a very, very good card, but it's not an overly broken card at this point in time. I think spellbooks are a little bit too slow, and they can easily be overpowered, and Spellbook of Judgment will give them that first turn push that they really need to, keep the relevancy and to keep going as they were. So yeah, this has been a sort of review / discussion on Spellbook of Judgment and why I think that the card is able to come back to 1. If you like this video, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe on it. Let me know what you think about Spellbook of Judgment coming back to 1. Is it too broken? Is it just right? Maybe it needs to come back to 2 instead. Just let me know. This has been the Mermail Master with this card review. Hope you enjoyed, and I'm signing out. See you guys.